Hey everybody, this is John with the latest update to Adventures in Wrenching Project YJ. Today I'm going to be working on the back brakes finally, and that is other than the proportioning valve, which I may or may not replace. This is the last of the three parts. If you've watched the other two videos, you know that I fabbed up a custom power brake booster system out of a GM. I've already had a video of the front brakes, and now we're going to do the back brakes. Now, yes, I am already starting with it lifted. It is on frame stands. The wheels are off, but to be honest, if y'all can't get that far on your own without a video to show it, you probably shouldn't be working on this thing in the first place. So anyway, we're going to take a look and see if these drums will even come off. Now, y'all know that oh wow, that's easy. Y'all know that if you get in the water and everything else, that these have a tendency to sometimes stick on this, but I got away lucky. You want to do a visual inspection on the front and on the back, and I don't see any signs of leaking wheel cylinders, so these are probably good to go. But you can see that these are definitely getting thin on the front or on the back, and I have not replaced these since I've owned this Jeep. So all right, we're gonna go ahead and get started on this. Now, there's no real bad lip on this, but I'm still gonna take it down and have it turned so I get a nice smooth surface, because I bet you when I do this, it's going to be egg-shaped a little bit, and that would even make it worse, so you only get a little bit of brake. Alright, there we go. Get my brake tool here and we'll get started. Okay, so this is basically what I'm going to need to do this. If you don't have these tools, you can actually do this with needle nose pliers and a long, stout screwdriver. And hope that you don't tear your fingers up, because those springs are under pressure. I will still need a regular flat blade screwdriver to probably ply this off, even though I've got an end here, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Also going to need a hammer, which I've got around here somewhere. That's pretty simple. And the first thing we're going to do before I tear any of this apart is we're going to actually match up the brake drums to make sure that not the drums, but the shoes, to make sure I got the right shoes, rather than tear this all apart and then find out that I've got to order in new ones. Now, one thing I will point out, these drums are available, but they're getting harder and harder to find for these Dana 35s. Most of the time they're not sitting on the shelf at the local parts place. They're in their warehouse. Okay, got the new shoes out. They do, for design, seem to line up pretty good, other than being thicker. Now, an interesting thing is these Wagners seem to have a little better leading shoe. So that you guys know, the pad on these is not the same length on the front and the rear, which is the leading shoe and the trailing shoe. The bigger one goes to the back, because as you put on the brakes, kinetic energy pushes the vehicle forward, pushing the drum into the pad back here. So it's got less pad material on the front than it does the back. But Wagner gave a bonus, and there's a little more pad on this, and it's not rotated around. When you look underneath, it's pretty even on the bottom, and it's okay in the top, and it actually the rivets go on those right there. So I think we're going to be fine on these. Okay. Now, one of the first things you'll notice is that it's got these. And what these do is hold the shoes in place. And this is one of those things that I was talking about where it's rusted. But you give it a little push. You give it a little push, and it comes off. Now, I did buy a hardware kit, and it should have these in here. So we'll see. I'm hoping you can see this okay. Okay, so that takes care of both of those. Now, the beauty of this tool is that this is for getting a grip and stretching the spring, but this end is reaching underneath it and getting behind it. That's one. Now what I like to do is I like to lay these out in the same order and hopefully not screw it up too bad. Okay, got that one. That has come off, so we've got these two springs. Your emergency brake slide. Goes this way and around, and the hook goes to the bottom. Now this should start to come apart a little bit. And part of the problem is this right here. That's got a crimp clip on it that needs to come off, and I'm going to go ahead and use a screwdriver and a hammer and get that out of the way if I can find my hammer. Okay, so with hammer in hand, and there you go. You can see that it's all opened up, and hopefully I don't have to use that again. And this takes apart the attachment that hooks to your emergency brake, which you can see the cable right there. Now the emergency brake does actually work on this, so that's good news. Now you've still got your adjusting wheel at the bottom, but I should be able to pull everything apart now. The wheel was faced this way. Now you'll notice that this came apart. The other thing is you definitely want to screw it in some because the pads are the brake shoes are thicker, so you're going to need the extra room, and this is going to collapse it down further, so we'll be able to get the drum on later. Okay, all the parts are out. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up some with some brake fluid, and then we'll start doing video again when I put it back, start putting it back together again. Okay, my initial cleaning is done. It actually looks pretty decent. This is the hardware kit. I do have two rubber adjusting plugs, so that'll be replaced. You can see the crimp clip, the new hold down springs, and adjusting springs. So it does not come with your adjusting wheel, so I'll clean that up a little bit more, or the bar. But it does come, or the cable or anything like that. So I have a little more cleaning than I'm going to have to do. But my next step is I'm going to pull that other drum off and get these down to the machine, to the auto parts place. Now there are auto parts places that actually do turn drums as long as they spec out okay. And in my neck of the woods, it costs about $15 per drum. Now, if you order them in, you can get them in from Rock Auto for about $26 or $27 a drum, which is not bad, but then they charge $22. It is the least expensive shipping to here. So then you're up to about $34, $35, as opposed to what I can get them for locally, but then I'd have to pay tax. So it's kind of a wash, and I'm going to, like I said, there's no big lip on these, so I'm going to try to save these. The reason is because at some point I do have another axle, a later one, and I'm going to see if the axle shafts will swap out, and I might be able to do this to a disc brake conversion. So we'll see. Okay, I'm at my old store. I used to be the manager here, so I get a few executive privileges still. I'll still pay them for using the machinery, but this is the brake lathe. These are the drums. We're going to spec them out, make sure that they can even be turned, at least within spec. And my recommendation, if they're not in spec, is to get new drums, and we'll see where we are. Okay, a lot of drums have this, and you can see it right there. It will give you the max diameter, which in this case is 10.06. Now, when you set one of these up, you want to use the bell that comes closest to actually fitting the flat face, the largest that they have, and that would be this one. Reason is you want a flat face on the front and back so it'll grip it tightly, and then we got to get a cone. Okay, this cone fits in there nicely, and I've got some pretty good overlap, so that one will be good. Okay, had to get this set up to turn drums rather than rotors, and these drums are so small that I even had to angle it slightly just so I could get a good connection to it. So see where we're at. It's got contact. Should be able to hear how that sounds. It is out of round, and you can actually see it on the rotor, or on the drum itself. So that's exactly what I was talking about, and also a reason why you should not shortcut, because that area that you see is the only area that you've got brake contact. If it's not perfectly round, you've only got about however much percentage that is of your whole braking surface. Okay, I'm on my second cut right now, and you can hear that it's got contact all the way around so far. It's still warbles a little bit, but I think I got a complete cut. We'll see. You can still see where it did not cut the first time. Now, one thing I might mention is the fact that you can't cut too much at the same time. You have to do it in stages, or it'll screw up the bit, and it'll wound up scoring and screwing up your drum. Okay, looks like this one is going to be a good cut, so I'll be able to pull this, wipe it all down, and then get the second one chucked up. Now, I did actually mic these again. You can see the little bit of cross check in here. That was when you could hear it singing. That means that the bit is not that good, but that'll all smooth out. At least it's flat and smooth, and it's spec'd out right at the limit. So they'll be good for this pass, but next time around I am going to have to get new drums. So we're cutting the next one. Okay, this one actually had more meat on it than the other one, so this one is well within spec. So that's good. So we're gonna, it's gonna be too late today to do this, but in a little while, maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday, I'm gonna go ahead and put all this back together, and we will keep filming then. Okay, like I said, I worked as long as I could on this project after leaving the shop, but it is a beautiful sunset, so not a bad way to end the day. And we'll hit it again and finish this video up. Good morning to all. We are on session number 2 of Project YJ and the rear brakes. Since I had to work yesterday, I didn't get around to coming back, but it is a nice sunny Saturday morning, and we're gonna finish this little video up and get these brakes put back together. All right, now, like I said, you can see these drums definitely look way better than they did. I'm gonna clean the outsides up of those up a little bit better. Now on this side, I've already got it cleaned up a little more. Now, an interesting note I found out while I was doing a little research on this is this hole. This hole is there if I had my differentials or my transfer case set. This hole right here is to get to these bolts right here. So this means that this is an externally mounted axle, which means that if I were to pull these, rotate this around, pull these 4 bolts out, the whole axle assembly would come out. Now on these Dayton 35s, there is also an internal clip version which does not have this hole, and you would have to pull the differential to pull these axles. Now I'm not going to do that today, but I may have access to an axle that's got disc brakes, and I think I would like to do a disc brake conversion on this, and I probably will, but it's not necessary at this point, especially since I have new brake pads. So we're going to go ahead and start getting this all put back together. Okay, so I have the camera set up where you guys can actually see this. Now I did get most of this all cleaned up. Just used a regular wire wheel on a drill. Not trying to make it pretty, but at least just knocking some of the surface rust off. Not interested in making it show quality because I'm just going to beat this up again anyway. Now one thing I recommend doing for sure is keeping one side done while you work on the other side, because if I need to use this as reference, even though I got these parts laid out, there is a good chance that you're going to need to take a look for all of these springs and everything else, and getting it all put back together again. Now you remember in the last one I told you, make sure that you put your larger shoe to the back side. Now this is going to take a little extra work, and one of the first things you really want to do is get your retaining springs back in place. Now a lot of times you can actually just spin it. Now the thing that concerns me a little bit about this is that is awfully loose. But by the time that I actually get it up here where it belongs, up to this inner area right here. It's going to ride up here, not down in here. And it's also going to, when it's tight, going to ride up there. Now the biggest thing to do is, like driving a stick shift, don't get intimidated by it. A lot of people will tackle disc brakes, but they won't even touch drum brakes because they think it's too complicated. And there are more moving pieces to this. But if you do it right, you can get this all taken care of. They do actually have a special tool for this, and I do have it somewhere, but I have no idea where it's at. But a pair of pliers will work on this. Okay, I made my first mistake, and I'll fix it here in just a second, but this actually goes behind the brake shoe here. So we'll go ahead and get that in place. Now one thing I do recommend, even though it's showing disc brakes and even though it's drum brakes, on anything that is metal-to-metal contact that's supposed to move, like this pivot point, I put a little bit of brake lubricant on it. Because you want it to bind as little as possible. Here's that C-clip. Now you can do this with a large pair of pliers, and this should crimp right down. Maybe. Perfect. Not binding, not loose. So now I should be able to put this back on again. Now, you will notice that on this brake you've got a notch out here and a notch out here. This crossbar that's right here will go on that notch right there, not this one. So I'm going to shut this off and clean that bar up a little bit. Something else I will point out is that not everything comes in these hardware kits. Now these parts are still available sometimes. Different types of cars it gets more difficult. But this spring is not in that kit. So you definitely want to clean it up as best as possible. If this is broke, don't shortcut it. You'll just have to go down to a wrecking yard, or maybe hit up some different part stores, or go online and order it up. But you definitely need all of the parts to make this work. Now the good news is that this is pretty directional, which means that you can only get this really in there one way. And until you get these retaining springs on, they're going to be a bit of a problem. And I think I see something else that I didn't put on yet. Then I'll go check the other side, and if I did. But this is supposed to fit up in here somewhere, so that the emergency brake cable can go around it and back down to this hook right here. So let's go take a look and see where that goes. I'll take you with me, because this is proving my point that even when you have done these, you'll have a tendency to forget. Okay, it actually gets held on by this retaining spring, so I didn't forget anything. It's just that it actually fits in behind the retaining spring. Alright, that's good to know. Those have to be cleaned up anyway, so no need in wasting fill time, just cleaning things up for you guys. Okay, so this is what I was talking about using a little bit of this grease, because this is where that cable goes, and that was just covered in rust. So every opportunity you get, if you've got a way to make this slide a little better, work a little better, especially for just using a little packet of grease that only costs like about $1.50, probably not even that, it is worth it. Now you'll notice that I am matching up springs here to see where it goes. Now remember what I said about using that special tool? This is where this thing comes really handy, because you see this end of it right here? This hooks through there. In theory, and in. Nice and simple. It's worth the money, and you'll see now how I have it set back in there up against there. That top part's done on that one. Except that I made a mistake again, so I got to pull that off. Forgot to put that back on. Okay, next one I'm going to put in is another yellow spring. On this particular spring set, it only goes one way. On the other side, the spring is flipped over. So I think on the other side they've got it backwards. You notice that that's all nice and tight again. That's all back up. And everything is in place. So the top part of this is done now. Now what I'm also doing is as I line up each piece, getting rid of pieces as I go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up my emergency brake cable, and then we're going to start working on that. Okay, so I've already got this in place. This goes here and up and around there, and what that's going to do is that's going to hook on your adjuster. And this adjuster fits actually in behind right there. And it all fits like that. Now, I cannot stress enough, do not lose your parts. One, because I'm old and I've already done that before, but if it's your daily driver and it's like your only driver, you'll be catching like an Uber or a Lyft someplace to go find more parts. So, just don't do it. Move on to the next. Okay, in full disclosure, I did pull this back apart, put it back on because this adjusting linkage should be behind the springs and not in front of the springs, and I caught that early on. So I went ahead and pulled those out and put that spring behind there. Now this does, since this backing plate is flush here, this will free float, and actually this will drop down a little bit as it adjusts out, but that's normal. Okay, I want to emphasize the importance of this next part. What I've got in my hand, and it's in 3 pieces right now, is the brake adjuster. Because this is the part that keeps your, it's like an automatic self-adjuster. Now I like to definitely, oh, and it is reverse thread. Sorry. I like it to be well lubed. Make sure everything works, because this is what will automatically adjust your, in theory anyway, your brake drums by using this ratcheting clip right here, or this ratcheting clip on this adjuster, that when you hit your brakes in reverse, it will ratchet it out until the brake drums are flush. You'll notice that it is side specific. This is the right side, passenger side, and it goes in behind that little adjuster. Now you can see how it goes. This pulls against this brake. When you hit your brakes, this cable system works and it pushes this down and then springs back in place, just like that. So I'm going to shut this back down so that I make sure that I have enough. And then the next thing that we're going to be doing is with the put these lower springs on, or I should say lower spring, because I think there's only one of them. Those do go the same direction. Now, you see how much easier it probably works with that tool than not? And this is all set. And that takes care of that. Now here's another interesting thing, which is probably why my brakes have sucked. See how bad the cracking is on that? These rear brakes are totally toast, which is why I have been noticing. Same way with this one. Totally done. Well, now we get to do a test fit of one of the drums. Now, one thing before you get to this point, because you can actually, you want the drum to barely fit on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the transfer case in neutral. But you know, check. Oops, see, I already found a problem. When I put that on, that spring came loose. Got it. Okay, that's why you do an inspection. Okay, so that's in place. Springs are in place. These springs are in place. This spring is in place. This is actually sitting on there. And now we should be able to do a test fitting. So let me go ahead and put this in neutral, and we'll do a test fit. Okay, so test fit of the drum like I talked about. And it fits right on. And now obviously you want it to fit on, but it is too loose. This should actually just barely rub. So pull that out a little bit, and you slowly start rotating your brakes. You're adjusting your brakes out. And what I'm doing is I'm expanding the shoes. At least I think I am. I went the wrong direction. Again, backwards threads on these. And once you get it to where the drums are actually just barely tight, that's when you stop, and you would, by hitting reverse while it's driving. Still too loose. There's a lot of adjustment in these. Now you definitely want to center your shoes back on your backing plate. Okay, see how tight it got? So I did too much. So I want to bring this back in again, just a little bit. And there you have it. These are done. All right. I'm going to do the same side, same to the other side. It's the same on both sides, so I'm not going to repeat that part of the video. I'll catch back up to you later when it's all said and done, and we'll go take a test drive. Okay, I've got everything laid in place for the other side, and for the fun of it, I'm going to go ahead and time this. Full disclosure, again, it is always faster on the second one than the first one, because you kind of figure out what it was that you're doing. But I'll go ahead and time this just to kind of show you guys how long this should take with average tools for an average person on one side, if you kind of know what you're doing. And I'll show the finished result. So, clock starts now. It's 12:10, and let's get going. Okay, with all the cleaning and everything else, it is now 1:16. Sorry about that. 1:16. So that made it an hour and 5 minutes, and that included actually getting it all, the drums back on. It's all adjusted out, and all I need to do is put the wheel back on. All the old parts are out. This one is a little tighter than the other one, but that'll all smooth out. So probably if you set aside about 2.5 hours to do it all, if you lay everything out, other than turning the trip to actually turn the drums, you should be able to complete this. So now all that's left to do is go ahead and put the other wheel on, clean up everything real quick, and then we're going to go for a test drive. And hopefully it all works, or this is going to be a real interesting trip. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do our test run. Hopefully this doesn't become a Faces of Death video, and see if this works like I think it will. One of the things I'm going to do is be pulling up here and then actually do some reverse stops, because that's what's going to adjust my brakes out. I have a lot of pedal going backwards, that's for sure. That I'm going to be checking for after I drive it a bit, and I won't have the camera going the entire time until I get back out, is I'm going to drive it around for a little bit and then see if there is smoke coming out of my brakes when I'm done. So I'll check in with you all in a bit. Clean old Cadillac in front of me while I'm out test driving this. Well, thank you all for joining me on this most recent episode of Adventures in Wrenching, Project YJ. I am going to probably be tackling the exhaust system next because you guys heard how loud it was. Anyway, if you found this entertaining, enlightening, informative, or any of the above, please like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube. And I'll see you on the next adventure, which is going to be Project Crossfire.